showed glimpses of it. They had like the Polaroids, the light flashing, the chainsaw. It was a really excellent trailer. And I remember falling asleep in the theater watching it. But I wonder if that's what gathered everybody, because then the Friday the 13th remake came out. It didn't do well. Nightmare on Elm Street remake came out. It didn't do well. Actually, all the remakes of the slasher movies from the 80s, 70s, and 80s have a 26% average. So you have like Halloween, bad. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, Prom Night, My Bloody Valentine, Friday the 13th, Sorority Row, Nightmare on Elm Street. They have a 26% average. That's bad. So they haven't been able to crack that code.
What about, now you wrote this article in 2019, right? So was that after the other Halloween, which was a sequel? Yeah,
that's a reboot. That falls in the line of.
Well, it's really like a sequel, isn't it?
But see, this is where it gets confusing nowadays. You have Jurassic World, you have Force Awakens, and Halloween. They're essentially the first movie again. There's a Death Star. There's someone like on Force Awakens. She's on a desert planet. She gets off. They blow up a Death Star.
Right.
And planets are blown up. The Death Star blows up a planet. They blow it up.
Don't even get me started on Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars, Force Awakens, and then what? Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Animals escape.
See, I think that's their way of doing a sequel, but like making it a reboot, so you can kind of like to try to get people who are new to the series, but also to be like, hey guys who like the originals, check this out too, because it's kind of a sequel, but it's also a reboot. Like it's weird.
I would call it a reboot because, all right, in Halloween, you have Michael escaping. He escapes in the first one, but
she's
this
old.
time that dumb Dr. Sartan releases him. Like Michael has no agency in the 2018 movie. Like he gets hit by a car and driven to Laurie's house. It's a bum Michael Myers.
Right.
And they like when he goes and does that, when he steals the knife and kills the lady in their house and goes out, that's Halloween 2.
Yeah.
And so it's,
which I want to point out real quick. That's the only issue I have with that 2018 reboot or whatever is the doctor going like kind of crazy. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, and
it felt out of nowhere.
All agency away from Michael.
Yeah,
all agency away, and I don't know. It just, but for some reason, people loved it because it's once again it's familiar, but it's different enough. And I mean, listen, I'm cool with Judy Greer shooting Michael Myers in the face. Like that's cool, and she was in Jurassic World too. Like, you should just put her in every reboot.
Any reboot. She should have been in Force Awakens.
Yeah, exactly, and then just have her, crush it. I guess that's where the majority of these. I guess that's where remakes work. Like Let Me In worked because it really stuck closely to the original, but it also added a couple new scenes for people looking for something different. I think it's and also like the Stepfather remake that was PG-13. Like you just I don't know, you just can't make those movies. I don't think they work.
By the way, I just looked it up. So apparently Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D was a sequel to the original Tobe Hooper classic, and then Leatherface, which came out in how many years ago?
That was a prequel, right?
That was a prequel to the original in 2017. That came out. So that's what I'm saying is there's like so many different timelines and characters. It's all over the place.
And there's so many different timelines with Halloween too. There's Halloween 1, 2, and H2O and Resurrection, and then there's Halloween 1 and 1978 and 2018. And then there's Halloween 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Why do they do that? Why do they call like Halloween the 2018 is technically like, I thought they presented it as a sequel to the original, right? Because he got locked up and Laurie Strode has all this stuff. But why do they call it Halloween? Like if you're trying to remake Halloween 2, then call it Halloween 2 or call it Halloween and give it a subtitle. It's the same with the Thing.
40 years later.
Right. But the Thing, when the Thing, the Kurt Russell one, that other one that came out with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, that one in 2011, that was a prequel, but they also just called it The Thing. I just don't understand. Like, just give it a subtitle or something. It still has the title in there. No one's going to be confused.
Yeah, it's an odd thing. Well, I guess they didn't want to have a third Halloween 2. So they were just happy doing a third Halloween?
Yeah, but okay.
You know what I don't like about Halloween 2018?
What?
The beginning of the movie features them reinflating a pumpkin. So that not reinflating, but there's a rotten pumpkin, and then they make it whole again. It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
That's so pompous.
We're making it better.
Also, I want to say though, the I guess the gold standard of remakes are not the Japanese horror films, which have a 33.6% average. It's the remakes of vampire movies.
Yeah,
I
saw
Bram
that.
Stoker's
That's
Dracula, Fright Night, Dracula 1958, Dracula 1979, Nosferatu the Vampire, Let Me In. It's interesting how vampire movies have stayed really like fresh with their remakes. Why do you think that is?
Do you think that could be? I haven't given a lot of thought to this, but
readaptations.
Well, I think maybe it has to do with the fact that Dracula himself, is more of a human character. I'm using human in quotes, that like talks, thinks, can manipulate, rather than just a serial killer stalking someone or zombies or any of that kind of stuff. Like, it's still someone that technically maybe we have like a little more connection to than just a monster. That's
a great point. And you can also, I mean, Dracula movies have also been made more like, sexier, right?
That's
Since
true.
31.
Yeah.
So they've been able to kind of adapt it. Like, they've been able to make it more modern, I guess.
Yeah, but do you think that would raise its run? Because like the ones I'm looking at, the ones you have listed, none of those are like sexy vampires, right? Except for Colin Farrell.
Gary Oldman and Bram Stoker's.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Remember the werewolf scene? Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why, I don't know why I'm throwing that in, but it's just interesting where you can barely remake a 1980 slasher movie, or even you can't really even recreate a John Carpenter or Wes Craven. Did you see the averages for John Carpenter with The Fog?
Oh man,
and just those, it's really hard to remake his films. But then you can do a vampire movie. But I guess that's why I like presenting this data. I just kind of presented the numbers because it's really hard to hypothesize why they're so much more successful.
Right. Trying to figure out what the common denominator is for some of the better ones and some of the worst ones.
But I guess if you take it, I mean, Francis Ford Coppola did Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, It's one of the most sumptuous Oscar-winning for costumes and art direction movies you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Let Me In, Matt Reeves did it, and he's moved on to excellent films.
Right.
Then you have Fright Night. The guy who did that directed I, Tonya. So, I mean, Gillespie directed that. So maybe it's collected good. They've collected good actors.
I mean, I think a lot of it does happen behind the scenes of like, regardless of script and story, like you got to get good director, cinematographer. I mean, any of like the stuff, like actors, if you have a good cast, I mean, that doesn't always matter because Psycho, I thought, had a really good cast. That didn't really pan out well.
Yeah. But then look at Werner Herzog directed Nosferatu the Vampire. So maybe they aren't cash grabs and maybe people just love them and then they do them, because that Psycho shot for shot remake by Gus Van Sant there's no reason for it to exist.
Yeah. I don't know why it does.
But that's why I love this world of remakes. It's just, I don't know. For me, a good remake, what's a good remake for you? I think a good remake for me is a companion piece to the original, where you could watch them back to back and they're not the same thing. They both complement each other. I do like that, like I said, The Fly and The Thing, I really like those. And if you watch the originals, they're so much different. Mm-hmm. The overall plot is there, but the scripts, the characters, the story, it's just different. And then same with I really like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I love the original and I love the remake, the first remake, the 78 version. You know what it could be? And sorry to jump on you, but The Fly was in the 50s. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was made in the 50s. And then they recreated them in 78 and 88 with just much, and The Thing in 82. Yeah. They're not above 90, but they had big gaps between them, 30 years, 40 years, 25 years. So, I mean, if you think about the effects and the blood and The Thing, when you think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, just how it was able to kind of be like super kind of gritty, and then Nosferatu the Vampire, bloody and kind of sexy with Herzog, and the what else was there? The Fly with the arm snapping and the Cronenberg of it all. So they were able to take these really old properties and make them super fresh again, not make a wildly violent 70s film into a less violent film. They made it more violent, but they also, I think, established more of like a horror atmosphere to, like, if you watch the originals, maybe this is part of it too, is like if you watch the original The Thing from the 50s, that one
there might be a few scary moments, but like overall, it's very like kind of tonally not horrific. Same with The Fly. I mean, The Fly, I guess, is a little bit more, but like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a lot of those are just like kind of tense sci-fi movies rather than pure horror and pure body horror that they became in the 80s.
Cronenberg.
So maybe like taking a movie that's not necessarily just like pure horror and making it more horrific also helps.
Oh, yeah, it has to, right?
I would think so.
Just make it different. Bring a twist to it. Add a different slant.
Yeah.
Oh.
You wrote this because of the upcoming Child's Play.
Yeah.
One that
and
was
I got the
coming
score wrong. I predicted it was going to be 44% and it ended up being 60%. And it's because listen, people have disowned it because Mancini didn't work on it.
Yeah.
Who did all the other Child's Play movies, but it's still 60% because it took Mark Hamill and made him an AI Chucky. So it did something different.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what carried it. It wasn't just a voodoo doll again.
Yeah.
And the doll wasn't as nasty. Like Chucky's nasty, man. Like
I know.
I had to write this video for the Film Theorist that hasn't come out yet, but where it's just I watched all those movies again, and Chucky's just a nasty little shit.
Yeah.
So in this one, it was more of an earnest murderer.
Because it was just AI gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't a serial killer in a body.
Right.
Woof.
I do think you have a point about the length of time between the remakes. I mean, I'm sure there's some that could disprove that, and maybe I'm taking away the whole foreign aspect of it. I'm just talking about like length of time for like American film to be remade. But like movies like Cabin Fever, wasn't that movie remade like 8 years after the first one?
And it got a 0% score. Like, how do you get nastier than the original Cabin Fever?
Yeah, that's so weird. 2016.
Why do you do it? Why do you make a PG-13 The Fog?
Yeah, that's weird too.
Flatliners? It's just, I don't know. I got, you know what I think it is? I think you gotta embrace, like you said, going like The Fly, adding in that body horror, adding in more horror, or The Thing, just with the practical effects, and Nosferatu the Vampire, just going that direction. I think that's what you have to do in these movies. Yeah. And also, Fright Night, that got quite mean too. Remember when he takes the neighbor into his dungeon and Anton Yelchin's trapped in there, and she kind of, as she's getting her blood consumed, she looks at him and tells him to be quiet.
Oh yeah.
Like he's like, that movie goes quite nasty, not nasty. Like there's still a good comedy bent to it, but it's much meaner. It has a lot of meaner scenes than the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
I know we're kind of talking in circles here, but I think we're kind of onto something, man. Like, remember the Ring when it came out? It's not the freshest movie, but that girl, she lit people up, man.
Yeah.
They're frozen in fear faces.
That was wasn't that PG-13?
Yeah, because I guess
weird.
it's just bloodless.
Yeah, it is. They're just like dried out or whatever, or wet. I don't remember.
What's crazy though, that movie's PG-13, but then The Conjuring is R.
Yeah,
The Conjuring got an R rating just because of terror.
Really? It didn't have like cursing or anything in it? I don't remember.
No cursing, no nudity. It's very wholesome actually, but it's so scary they gave it an R. But then The Ring, which is drenched in like murder and suicide and frozen faces, gets a PG-13.
What horror movie? Well, actually, I'm going to ask this one first. Do you think they ever remake Jaws? Like actually remake the first one?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't see how they can.
I don't think they'll do it anytime soon, but I think eventually they do.
I mean, I just don't know how you can tell it.
I don't know how you can make it much different, like telling the same type of story and make it different or better or any of that kind of stuff, except for like you can say we're upping the CGI because of the practical effects are dated, maybe. I don't know.
I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think people are smart enough to leave that alone. Like, no one's remade Casablanca. Like,
that's true.
No one's remade, you know what I mean? Like, or Annie
The Godfather.
Hall. Like, no one's, like, French Connection.
Yeah.
I don't think some people want to touch it.
But they have remade classics before. Like certain ones.
It's like a slasher, though. Like, it's just It's a formula. Like Jaws isn't a formula.
I'm
Like,
trying to think if any Steven Spielberg movie has been remade, right?